All right. Hello and welcome to the live stream. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So I'm so glad you're here. We're going to be working on stretching for the thigh muscles today. So you're going to want to be wearing something comfortable that you can move around in. And looks like we're good. I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick. Give me a moment. So if you're not wearing something comfortable, you're going to want to go change clothes now so you can follow along with our stretching as we go. So what we'll do is I'll show you how to do the stretch and then we'll do it together and I'll walk you through everything. It should be very easy to follow. Even if you've never done this before, that's okay. You can do this at any level, whether you're advanced and wanting to gain flexibility or you're just starting out. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So if you need to, go change clothes now to something comfortable you can move around in, especially pants you can move around in. So before we get started, I wanna make sure I go over that none of these stretches should be painful, okay? So if it's causing you pain, don't do it. That's just the rule across the board. None of these should hurt. It's actually not gaining you any flexibility. If it does hurt, it's actually potentially even hurting you or hurting your flexibility. So we want to gain flexibility, so that means no pain, all right? So what we're gonna start with is just warming up the muscles. We don't want to try and stretch cold muscles, so we're gonna start by getting blood flow into your muscles. So we're gonna start by just marching with your knees up to the front, just getting a little bit of blood flow into the joints before we start stretching them. You never want to go completely cold into stretching. So today we're going to be focusing on the muscles in the thighs. We're going to work the quads, the hamstrings, the rotators, and the adductors. Now, if none of that made sense, that's okay. I'll walk you through it as we go. We'll do this together. So just marching in place, getting some blood flow into the muscles in your legs. You might feel a little bit warmed up or like you're starting to sweat lightly. Don't feel like you have to really jog it out. Just a little bit of movement to get your heart rate and your body temperature up. And now we're going to go to side steps. This gets muscles in the sides and insides of your thighs moving. Gets a little bit of blood flow into that area. Again, we want to never go into a stretching exercise cold. Have a little bit of motion, a little bit increased body temperature. So if you're just joining us, we're starting in on a warm-up for the thighs, going into some stretching exercises. And just some circles with your legs, just getting warmed up. A little bit of rotation into those legs. All right, so our first exercise, or our first stretching exercise, is going to be for the quads. Now the quads are a muscle that run from the top of your hips all the way down to your kneecaps. They run right across the front here. There are actually several muscles here. What we're gonna do to stretch the quads is you're gonna lean up against a wall and then bring your heel up to the back, reach around, grab your ankle, and then gently pull up to the back. Now on this one, the further back your knee goes, the more of a stretch it's gonna be. So if it feels like, oh man, I'm not getting a stretch, you're gonna bring your knee back and keeping that constant pressure up on your foot till you feel a stretch right here in the front of your thigh. If you feel like it's too intense, where you bring it up here, you can always bring your knee forward to reduce the stretch. The further back you go, the more of the stretch, more forward, the less the stretch. So go ahead and stand with a wall, reach around, grab your ankle, and pull up to the back till you feel a gentle stretch in your thigh. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in chat or in the comments. I'd love to answer your questions. I will get to them as quickly as I can. Just gonna hold this stretch. You should feel a stretch in your quads. As you go, you might feel it loosen up a little bit and you might want to bring your knee a little further back. That's okay. Just go to where you feel comfortable. These muscles are used a lot in squats or going up and down stairs, so that if they're not stretched out, they can tighten up. Because when you work out, you actually create little tears in the muscle when you use it that build back stronger, but can build back shorter. So we're re-elongating those muscles. Taking deep breaths as you do it. Deep breaths as you stretch out. Don't hold your breath. And relax. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Stretching the quads in a standing stretch. So you're going to stand with your, again, using your hand for support on the wall, reaching around, grabbing your ankle, pulling up to the back, bringing your knee back until you feel a stretch in the front of your thigh. And taking deep breaths in. Don't hold your breath as you're doing it. You want to relax into that muscle. And the deep breaths actually help the body relax and release that tension. You might feel it's tighter on one side than the other. That's totally normal. I actually feel tighter on my left leg on this particular stretch as well. Whew. This side I have to pull a little bit higher to get that same level of stretch. You can feel it all the way from your kneecap all the way up into your hip. Anywhere along there is fine. And relax. Go ahead and let your foot down. All right, so now we just stretched the muscles in the front, in the quads. So now we're going to stretch the muscles in the back of the thigh. These are called the hamstrings. They're a long muscle group though, so we're actually going to stretch them multiple ways today because there's such a high demand placed on this muscle. There's a lot of ways it can be stretched and pulled on. So we're going to stretch it in a relaxed setting so that it is more resilient against those stresses on it. So what we're going to do is you're going to stand with one foot back and one foot forward. We're stretching the leg in the front, okay? So from here, you're going to straighten your front leg and you're going to bring your chest straight forward. So you're not trying to bend at the back. You're trying to bring your chest straight forward, keeping your legs straight. You should feel a stretch right here in the back of the thigh, up especially by your hip area. So this muscle actually starts all the way up in your hip, goes down to the back of your knee. So all the way along the back. So again, one foot out in front, one foot to the back. Bring your chest straight out towards the front, keeping your back straight, feeling a stretch in the back of your thigh. Again, you can use the wall for support on this one. Only go to where you feel tension but no pain. Let's go ahead and go together, pushing your chest out to the front and hold. The hamstring muscles that we're stretching out actually start all the way up at the hip, going down to the knee there, and can be pulled on from either side, either at the knee or the hip. So that's why we want to spend so much effort keep making sure that they stay long and relaxed, especially because if you drive a lot, if you're seated a lot, they can actually tighten up and shorten to where they get stiff. So stretching them helps them stay pliable and so they can actually move and not tear. So with this stretch, we're actually stretching more up at the hip side of the hamstrings. So on this one, again, the more forward you are with your chest, the more of a stretch. The more back, the less of a stretch you have. So just go to where you feel tension but no pain. It's a very common injury to have a hamstring tear. That's why we focus on keeping the hamstrings pliable and flexible. And then same thing on the other side. 1 foot to the back, 1 foot forward, using the wall for support. You're gonna bring your chest straight out to the front, feeling a stretch in your hamstrings, in the back of your thigh, all the way up into your hip. Again, it might be more tight on one side than the other. I have less flexibility in my left leg over my right one. I'm more right-handed. So that's very normal. We're not quite symmetrical. Just go to where you feel tension, and we're improving on both sides. Again, deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. We're actually training your nervous system as well as the muscles as we stretch. We're actually relaxing that nervous system, which can actually have a profound effect on flexibility. And relax. All right, so for the next stretch, we're gonna be going to the floor. We're gonna do what's called a runner's stretch. So I'm gonna move the camera a little bit. So we're going to go into a kneeling position on the floor. From here, so we're going to be stretching the muscles in the front of the hip. They connect up at the hip, then go down into the thigh, right in here. So what you're going to do is bring 1 foot to the front and then push the hips forward. So you're pushing from the glutes. Imagine like you're tensing up your glutes to help open up this region of your hip, stretching that towards the front. So you feel a stretch right across the front of your hip. You might feel a little bit into your abs as well, but mostly in that thigh. Okay? So again, tensing up the glutes, stretching into the hips. The glutes are the muscles in the back of your hips. So pushing forward with pushing your hips forward till you feel that stretch. All right, let's go ahead and do it together. Pushing to the front. Tensing up the glutes can actually help relax this muscle in the front and get a better stretch into that deep muscle of the thigh. Again, on this one, keeping your chest up. You don't want to round to the front. You want to keep your back up and pushing your hips forward. So you're not stretching your low back, you're stretching this right in here in the front of the hip. And deep breaths in, deep breaths out. And relax. Go ahead and switch to the other side. So you're going to put one foot out in front. We're stretching the muscle in the back hip on the front. So from here, you're going to push your hips forward, tensing up your glutes in the back until you feel a stretch in the front of the back hip. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in chat or the comments. Love to hear your questions if you have any. If you're just joining us, we're stretching the muscles in the thigh, focusing currently on the muscle in the front of the thigh, connecting up into the hip, doing a runner's stretch. Move my foot a little bit further forward. The more I bring my hips forward, the more of a stretch it's going to be. All right. So now we just stretched the front of the hips. Now we're going to go down into the hamstrings and stretch the back of the thigh, right back in here. So what you're going to do is lay on your back. You're gonna take your hands and reach around and grab underneath your thigh, holding onto your thigh with both hands, all right? What we're gonna be doing is stretching the muscle right back here in the back of the knee. So, holding on right there, you're gonna bring your foot out straight as you can. Now, it doesn't need to be completely straight. Just go to where you feel a stretch in the back of that thigh, okay? If it's straight, that's just fine. The more straight it is, the more of a stretch you'll get. And holding that right there. No, on this one, you don't want your toe to be pulled back because that is actually gonna stretch your nerve. You wanna let your just foot relax up in the air. If you feel like you have if you're pulling your foot back, you might feel like, oh, you're getting such a good stretch, but you're actually stretching the nerve, not the muscle. That's why you want to just relax your foot, let that nerve relax. Because trust me, stretching a nerve is not a fun thing. You might not feel it right away, but when you start relaxing, cooling off, suddenly that nerve will let you know. So just taking deep breaths, letting your body relax into that position. Should all feel very comfortable. Again, no pain in any of these stretches. Zero pain whatsoever. And same thing on the other side. You're going to grab underneath your thigh with both hands, straightening out your knee as straight as you can get it, and then holding that stretch, stretching the hamstrings in the back of the thigh. You can actually feel the tendons right in the back of your knee if you put your fingers right here, so a little bit lower than that, so the tendons don't dig in, or you don't not digging into your tendons. And hold that stretch. Other leg is flat against the ground as you're doing this. If you ever want to increase the stretch, straightening the knee more will increase that stretch. If it's too intense, you can bend your knee down to where you don't feel any discomfort. Again, deep breaths as you're doing this. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And relax. All right. So we're going to stay on the floor for this next exercise, or this next stretching exercise. So we're going to be working the rotators of the hip. So those, if you put your hand in your pocket, that's about where those muscles are, okay? Just feel them right about there. So what we're going to be doing is called a figure 4 stretch. So to do that, you're going to lay down on your back. You're going to take the stretching leg and cross it over the top so your heel is by your other knee. From here, you're going to lift your leg up to the front, grab underneath your thigh again, and gently pull up towards you till you feel a stretch in that hip right about where your pocket is on the leg that's crossed over the top. So again, crossing the leg over, reaching underneath, grabbing onto your thigh, and gently pulling till you feel that stretch. The more you pull, the more of a stretch you'll get. Now, if you feel a stretch with your foot on the ground, that's just fine. Just leave it there and relax into that stretch. Only go to where you feel a stretch in that hip socket, right here in the side. And relax into that stretch. Go ahead and start with me into that figure 4. It's called a figure 4 because if you look at your feet, you should be making sort of a figure 4 shape with your 2 legs. If anything doesn't make sense, feel free to ask a question in the chat or in the comments. Love to hear from you. I will get to it as quickly as I can. This is a muscle that actually runs right over the sciatic nerve, which hopefully you've never heard of, but most people with back pain have heard of that nerve before. So this can actually cause back pain if this muscle gets too tight. If you're someone who already has back pain and this is feeling worse, don't do it. Because if the nerve is already inflamed, we don't want to cause more discomfort for that nerve. So feel free to skip this one if you do have back pain and it's making it worse. If it's, that's only if it's making it worse though. If it causes you pain, again, do not do the stretch. This is a good preventative one if you don't have back pain though. So now we're going to do the other side. So we're going to be stretching the leg that's crossed over the top. And so you're going to cross your leg over, reaching underneath, grabbing onto your thigh, and pulling till you feel a stretch in your in the crossed over legs pocket area, right where your pocket would be, right in that side of the hip. This is a small muscle called the piriformis. Doesn't have a better name than that. It's I believe Latin or Greek. It's a small muscle, but it's a very important one because it, again, runs right next to that sciatic nerve. So we do not want this to tighten down on the sciatic nerve. It's one of the largest nerves in your leg. There's a thing called piriformis syndrome, also known as false sciatic pain. It's called false sciatic, not because the pain is not real, but because it doesn't come from your spine and the sciatic nerve up there. It comes from lower down, so that's why they call it false sciatic or false sciatica. And relax. All right, so we just stretched the muscle right where your pocket is. We're gonna go just a little bit higher, right at the junction of your thigh and your hip. We're gonna stretch a muscle called gluteus medius. So a lot of people know about gluteus maximus in the back. This one's a little bit more forward than that. It's called gluteus medius or glute med. So what you're gonna do, still laying on your back, you're going to bring your left leg straight. You're gonna bring your right knee up and then pull it over and across your body till you feel a stretch on the outside of your hip and thigh, right in this area. You might feel it all the way down to your knee. You might feel it, but usually not. Only sometimes it can go all the way down to your knee, but usually it's going to be about mid-thigh. Again, the further over you go, the more of a stretch it is. The more your knee is pointed up at the ceiling, the less of a stretch. So go to where you feel a stretch in the side of that hip, trying to keep your hips against the ground so you're not twisting with it. You're just pulling just your thigh over to the side. And now holding that stretch, feeling a stretch in that side of the hip into the middle of the thigh. Deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And relax. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So bringing your knee up and over and across your body. Feeling a stretch on the outside of your hip, all the way down to about mid-thigh. This is an important balancing muscle, especially. A lot of people who are weaker in this one or don't have a pliable full range of motion in this muscle will struggle with single leg squats or balancing on one leg, or might have be more prone to falls because they struggle with side-to-side balance. It's a very important muscle for stabilizing your hips. And relax. All right, we are just about done. We have one more stretch to do. So our last stretch is going to be for the adductors of the hip. which run right here on the inside of the thigh. So they run all the way from your knee up into your hip. So all across here. These ones actually, you have multiple muscles that you're stretching as you do this. So what you're gonna do is go into a kneeling position. You're gonna bring your leg out to the side. This is gonna be your stretching leg. From here, you're gonna sit back into your hips, sitting down towards the back. The lower you go, the more of a stretch there's gonna be. You're gonna go until you feel a stretch or tension in the inner part of your thigh, and then hold that position and take deep breaths in and out. So sitting down to the back, go ahead and go do it with me. If you can get all the way down to your heel, then try and bring your foot further out to the side to get more range. The further away your foot is, the more of a stretch this is gonna be. If you're needing to, you can always bring your foot a little bit closer and then sit down to the back to decrease the stretch. Just go to where your comfort level is though. It shouldn't feel any discomfort, just a light stretching feeling as you go down into the back. And hold that stretch. So you have three main muscles that are in this area. You have one that goes from the knee all the way up, one that goes from the mid-thigh up, and one that's deep here in the thigh up into the hip. So depending on which one is the tightest, that's the one you're gonna feel first. You might feel it all the way down here at the knee, and that's okay. We're just about done. This is our last stretch. And relax. We're gonna do the same thing, on the other side. You're gonna bring your foot out to the side, toe point towards the front, and then sitting down into your hip, feeling a stretch on the inner part of your thigh. And relax into that stretch. Again, this is a very common muscle to get tight if you do a lot of sitting. And these muscles can actually tighten up and they attach right at the same spot as your abdominal muscles. So these muscles being tight can make it hard for your abdominals to work as well effectively because they both attach right at the same tissues at the base of your hips. So you're playing tug of war with your own muscle at that point, and sometimes the abs just give up. Few more breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And relax. All right. So that was stretching for the thigh muscles. We covered a lot of the major muscle groups in the thigh today. So good work, everyone. I'm looking to do more of these live streams, so if you have a muscle group you want to focus on, let me know in the comments so that way I can tailor what muscles we focus on to what you guys are looking for. I'm thinking next time we're gonna probably do something in the chest or arms. If that sounds good to you, leave me a thumbs up or some sort of emoji down in the comments, and that way I know that's sounding good. If you want something else, let me know in the comments too, because I'd love to hear from you guys. So, thank you guys for being with us today. Hope to see you guys next time. Have a great day.